Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
And they were led by a black lad who was the top lad at the time. And he was, they were all smartly dressed, they were diamond Pringles, bleached jeans, all that nice haircuts, mushroom haircuts, flicks and everything. And I saw about 10 of them walk past me and I thought, whoa, you know, they look really smart. And the way they walked as well, they just had a sort of certain manner about them. With our firm, we had all different races and different cultures. We didn't care where you were from, if you was poor, if you was rich, if you was from a different social background, if you're from a different religious background, we didn't care. It wasn't about that. It was about being friends and sticking together. Going to the football together as a bunch of lads, watching each other's back, and about the clothes.
Today we are looking at the history of the very underrated Leicester City firms that have caused chaos throughout the years. We are going to listen to some of the old main lads from the baby squad. We are going to see video footage of some of their battles. And we are also going to hear what other top lads from other firms think of the baby squad. Let's jump straight in. Leicester, a city built on factories, football and fierce local pride. In the heart of England's Midlands, a city where identity wasn't always simple, and football wasn't just a game, it was a way of life. From the 70s onward, football firms emerged across the UK, young men forging identities through loyalty, violence and style. Among these groups, Leicester City's baby squad rose to infamy, a firm both feared and misunderstood. Before the baby squad, Leicester's football hooligan scene was rough and raw. Small groups of working class lads patrolled terraces, pubs and streets, loyal to their club, ready to defend their turf. Though records are scarce, local historians recall smaller, fragmented firms forming in the early 70s, rough skinhead crews and casual wannabes, loosely organised but fiercely protective. The baby squad, emerging in the late 70s and early 80s, changed the game, bringing youth, diversity and a new style. It was named by a police officer, noting their youthfulness compared to older firms, but this baby crew packed a punch beyond their years. The baby squad was more than violence. They were a fashion statement, adopting casual wear like Lacoste polos, Fila jackets and Adidas trainers, symbols of status and belonging. But the squad was also multicultural, a rare mix of backgrounds in a time and place where racial tension was the norm. We all know the legend that is Riaz Khan, but he isn't the only important top lad involved with the baby squad. Daz, Coalville Daz. Smith hailed from nearby Coalville, a skinhead turned casual, drawn to the firm's camaraderie and chaos. Paul Allan was one of the founding pillars, a strategic mind, a fearless leader in the thick of clashes. Tony Harrison, rated by many lads on the football casual scene. These lads represent the firm's diverse faces, from minority communities to local lads, united by loyalty to Leicester City and the baby squad's code. This is Tony Harrison's story. My first real memory that stuck in my mind was 1985-86 season. Ron Atkinson's mighty Red Devils were in town. Leicester, I was 17 years old at the time. There was a massive buzz around that day. UT and Liverpool were the biggest clubs in English football, and both teams took huge followings around the country, and today we're playing host to UT's Red Army. I and a few mates would hang around the pubs and the many street corners that lead down to Filbert Street. Now it's fast approaching the traditional 3 o'clock kick-off on a Saturday afternoon, thousands of football fans rushing to make it for kick-off. When standing on Burnmore Street, which leads to our ground, a small group of us younger lads see a smart, dressed-up firm of slightly older boys racing down to the away end where Ut's escort had arrived. That's when the roar from both sides went up. We ran down too, and watching these older boys kicking fuck out of each other gave me a buzz like I've never felt before. From then on, I was hooked. Loved it. Oh, and we beat them 3-0. Since then I was hooked on the scene, out buying as many Lacoste tracksuits, Adidas trainers, etc. I did a few stays for Her Majesty LOL for the next years on and off. The 90s, early to mid, I personally enjoyed the most. What a decade. Our main rivals are Coventry, Derby, Nottingham Forest, Villa and Chelsea. Had many good battles with the DLF over the years, their game as anything. Good on the England scene too. 50 of their main front line are as good as any in the country in my opinion. One of the biggest battles I've had with them was a midweek game at our place back in '95. We'd had this arranged for ages. We'd meet up at dinner time in a couple of pubs on the edge of the city to avoid police attention. Derby were heading over by coach, God knows how, but all afternoon no plod still. Then we get the call from Derby, they've arrived. So we wait a while, then start manoeuvring to the Woodgate area of the city where Derby's mob were plotted up. We're now approaching a bridge on the road, when over the bridge is Derby. Then we start charging, chanting BSBS. It's around 5:30 PM in rush hour and the place goes mental. There's maybe 50 to 60 DLF and over 200 plus of us. Derby spraying ammonia and CS gas into the early evening air. It was bedlam, bodies were going down everywhere. To be fair, even though heavily outnumbered, the DLF were holding their ground. No police could get through the rush hour traffic even though we could hear the sirens. Eventually, we started to back them off and get them on the run, so respect to that 50 to 60. A lot of other mobs would have folded due to our sheer numbers. The next time we went there, they mullered us. We got off a coach in their city centre. They were on us like rats. Proper ran us. Chelsea 89, they brought 10,000 plus to Filbert Street, same day as Hillsborough. It went off everywhere. Last game of the season, 95-96 season. Chelsea landed late at ours. We clashed off Dover Street near the train station. We came out of the Boozer because we heard they'd got off their train from Loughborough, 12 miles north of Leicester, ran straight into the headhunters. To be fair, a lot of their lads had gone straight back to London, so they're not at their fullest mob. However, they still had the balls to come to us. Another mental row, bottles, glasses, pool balls. We threw the lot at them. Then up the street came another 50 plus. We'd got them penned in the road. Eventually, the police arrived, and it was game over. Us back in town, then Chelsea back on the train. Villa always came, had good rows with them, home and away. Same with Forest. Coventry, the Legion. There's a big hatred between us. Had some good rows with them. They're a strange mob, not always talked about in hooligan circles, but can raise a firm. We had a big row a few years back, and some of our lads and theirs got burred. They turned up with tools. And not the first time either. They like their weapons do, the Legion. We've also had a few good ding-dongs with Newcastle. 92. At our place was mad. Fighting all day in town, in the stands, on the pitch. Another good row, I remember, was back in 2000. We were in London the night before our game with Spurs. Loads of us had booked hotels the night before. We were drinking in the famous Flying Scotsman pub. I'm standing outside early evening with 2 or 3 others when we notice a large group coming down the road because it was dark. We couldn't tell if it was more of our lot or Spurs had turned up. As they got closer, we realised it ain't Leicester. We could hear 'em shouting, "Come on, let's do it." With Geordie accents. It was Newcastle who'd been to West Ham. We had a good toe-to-toe before running them up onto King's Cross. We've been caught by Cov a few times. I've had my nose bust and ribs broken against them. They done my nose after England vul Poland in Kevin Keegan's last game, and my ribs in the Rocket Pub at their place on an Easter Monday game. I've enjoyed my time as a football casual. No regrets at all. I've travelled places with England I'd never normally dream of going. Loved England, home and away. Won rose, lost rose. We all have. The brotherhood and loyalty you get from football lads is like no other. I've gained loads of good friends from clubs all over Great Britain. The whole of football has changed now though, unfortunately. Over to the younger lads now. Enjoy boys. We did. Now let's listen to another legend, Coalville Daz. The following are all Daz Smith's own words.
Glace, God rest his soul, he was a big influence on me, to be fair. He pulled us from Coalville into it a little bit, to be fair. He seen we was good lads, sort of thing. And with Bradford, it was after the game, we were sitting in traffic, I'll never forget it, 2 carloads of us. And all of a sudden it's going off. And I can see Glace, who I don't know personally, but I know him well enough to get out the car and we've got to give these lads a chuck on, sort of thing. Nothing really happened, a bit of argy-barging running up and down the street. It was a big hill, I remember it, because we were all knackered when we got to the top of the hill. But then I think it set the seed, really. It certainly, and from then on, really, it was, full steam ahead, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Glaze was an infectious character anyway, wasn't he?
Absolutely fantastic. The main man for me, he really was. Sadly missed, Justin, and he's sadly missed.
Very
It was
much
good
so.
character as well, it was funny.
Definitely
It was as deep as the ocean, mate, weren't he? You know what I mean?
Definitely was. Knew how to earn a pound note as well.
Oh, yeah, he loved the pound note, didn't he? Yeah, like I say, he was very instrumental for me and the rest of the Coalville boys. You know, I got nicked against Forest in 83 or 84 with Lee Carter, another one, God rest his soul. Some guy, ain't there? And your name's in the paper and all things like that. So that's another one-upmanship, because it isn't really. It's something to be proud of, but it was then, you know. And he said, "Oh, Daz has been nicked and that." So that's another little way in. Did you know what I'm saying? In many ways, I'm sure I was craving to get there anyway. I'm probably kidding myself now.
You think about the Leicester Mercury. I mean, everybody bought the Mercury. Everybody read.
It was massive in them days, obviously, Justin, wasn't it? You know, it was your only way of knowing anything. Like, until the 90s, which you remember. Things changed with the football scene in the 90s, as everybody in the scene knows. Mobs got smaller, the dance and all that, and that's been documented a lot of times. But Leicester, it didn't really affect Leicester, I didn't think. A lot of the older lads, the original baby squad, shall we say, they sort of dropped out anyway, I thought. They dropped out. And then there was the 90s sort of kids. That's my involvement started then, basically. But the 90s for me was a lot, I'm not saying it was better or worse in any way, shape or form. It was more exciting for me. I can remember us going to West Ham once, Justin, on the train. There was only about 30 of us, probably 40 tops. And we had to run the gauntlet that day, but there was something quite exciting about it, you know. Going to West Ham, although West Ham probably weren't what they were 5, 6, 7 years previous, but it was still a daunting place to go. As many places were, you know. I mean, I've had my biggest good hidings at Scunthorpe and Plymouth, both on Tuesday nights. You know, stitched up and all the rest of it. So you're not. I don't like this. Who's the best firm? No, I say this. If you've never been done, you've never been kicked up the arse, you ain't been doing it properly, have you, really? Do you know what I mean? Because it's inevitable you're going to get your head kicked in it, really. It's inevitable, you know. You just, and we all have. And some of the lads, I mean, there's a couple of lads that I wouldn't name them anyway, but they've said, I've had enough of this. This is mental. We're going to get killed one day. And they decided to pull out.
Well, do you know what? I sometimes think, you know, looking at the 80s, looking at the 90s, some of the things that used to happen around the football scene, I'm surprised there weren't more deaths.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because them 90s, the late 80s and 90s, they were quite brutal, weren't they? I mean, 89 Chelsea down here, I mean, I've said about that in one of the books I've been in. That was just carnage. It really was. It was horrible, to be fair. It was horrible being part of it, you know, but like you say...
Well, I remember that game. I mean, there was violence, around the old Filbert Street ground from 1:30 onwards, 3 o'clock Saturday kick
before,
off.
during, and after.
That's
really,
right.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it was just a war zone. The ground was a war zone.
Yeah. Police had lost control that day.
100%.
They really had lost control, which you didn't see many times, really. To be fair, I never did.
And as we said before, if that had not been the day.
Yeah, the Hillsborough, wasn't it? Yeah, it was, yeah.
That would have been... I mean, obviously, it was high profile in the Mercury.
Yeah, but it would have got national press, I'm sure, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Chelsea were on their way back up, weren't
they?
To the old First Division.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Remember, they wore that red and white striped kit.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I think Speedy was playing.
God, Evans, that takes you back, doesn't it? Yeah, thinking about that.
Definitely.
89.
89.
Yeah.
The baby squad originally got its name in the year 1981 season by a group I wasn't part of this at this stage, of very young lads going to Leeds, Ellen Road, and having a row up there, and they were standing their ground, basically. And legend has it that the Leeds lot were calling them babies, a load of babies come up from Leicester. And that's how the name originally stuck 20 odd years ago now, the Baby Squad. The Baby Gang, I think the Leeds lot were calling it. I got into it because I'm from Coalville, which is 10 miles out of Leicester. I just used to keep in with the lads from Coalville until I could find myself being in the right place at the right time. The Baby Squad was, by and large, a city gang, a town gang, really. The football was another string to their bow. I just kept going into town, and that's what we do. Be there, every week. And before you know where you are, without any invitation or anything, you're there, aren't you? And that's how it works. We're going to Grimsby on Saturday at 11 o'clock. I'll be there and I'll be ready at 10:30 to make sure, because I'd nothing else in me life other than the football and family. It's nothing like the 80s was, or even the early 90s. The police are pretty well on top, aren't they now, with the bans? People are banned from city centres now, whereas with the earlier bans you were only banned from the game, so you just tagged along. I mean, I've been banned twice, and I've never been banned from town centres, so I've just tagged along. I even got to an away game. But now it's so difficult. But I think, basically, nowadays, it's for the diehards, if you like, the ones that are committed to it. Because it's so difficult. You've got to have a little bit of luck with it as well. You've got to be a bit clever. I mean, for an example, Birmingham a few seasons ago. Leicester had 120 lads in Birmingham from 11 o'clock in the morning without Birmingham knowing they were there. Digbeth High Street was where they were told to go, and they were there at 11 o'clock in the morning. All they did was, instead of getting on trains and coaches, they got taxis booked from different areas of Leicester, and basically nobody knew where they were going. Maybe 5 or 6 knew. But the rest didn't before the taxis turned up, and they got to Birmingham. They turned up, and they did the business. The Birmingham lot will tell you that. Leicester had them on their toes. It was fantastic. Yeah. It was one of the best for quite some time. If you can mobilise 120 lads and get them to Birmingham, alright, it's not far from Leicester, but you've still got to get over there, and the lads were there, and yeah, it worked a treat. So, there's your answer, if you're committed and you really want it. The thing is with the Baby Squad, since 81 when it all started, we've always maintained a firm, always have done, even through the rave scene. Alright, there was a few got pulled away, but we've always had a firm, especially at home, and we've been slated in the past because we don't travel away, and I can see where people are coming from in some respects. But we've always had a firm, and it's like, people seem to hate us, people don't seem to rate us. But I found it hard to believe, because most firms in the country over the last 20 or so years must have had some sort of row with us. They must have had. We've had rows right through the 70s and 80s. The 70s I can't comment too much about. The firm now, we're by no means the best firm in the country. I wouldn't suggest that for 1 minute, but I know for a fact we're not the worst. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I'll tell you the honest truth. When it first started, obviously, there's still some of them lads going today. And there's even 3 or 4 lads' dads and their kids involved in it. And now there's the young lads coming up. Mix it all together, and I think we would probably be a main firm again. We might pick our games perhaps now, just 3 or 4 a season away, because it is harder now, as you know. But at home, we're always 150-handed, probably sometimes more. This season against West Ham, there'd got to be 200 of us there. I mean, nothing went off, nothing serious. We were there still though. And it's the same faces, a few young ones in. But we have kept pretty much the same all through it. And it's great. Some of them are now personal and family friends, and they will be till the day I die. And that's what it's all about, really. Again, I'm going to have to refer back to that 89 Chelsea game. Personally, I see one Chelsea lad, a big fella, lying on the floor. His head was ripped to bits, and he was in a right state. There were 7 or 8 stabbed or slashed that day. I did see another Leicester lad cut down his chest and the back of his head. That was the worst I've seen. Like I said earlier, it was a good old ruck. It was a good row. It really was. But I suppose the worst incident really was the 2 Leeds boys in Istanbul. That sickened me. It really did. I've got no history with Leeds as such. They're not friends or anything. But to see them 2 lads killed, that really did upset me, and I think likewise for a lot of lads. They seemed to get a bit caught out. I do know that Leeds had a fucking massive firm out there as well. And the old Bill kept Leeds together pretty much, I think. These lads got caught out and lost their lives. That sickened me. It really did. The only thing I could say I would change is how easily I've been arrested personally in the past, which has led to bans, which has led to fines, prison and all the rest of it. Personally speaking, I would try not to get arrested as easy. A classic example for me is '96 when we went to Chelsea. There were 32 or 33 of us, and I think 18 of us didn't have tickets. So, the lads went to the game, we were in Covent Garden and all various places in London. 2 of the lads came out the ground at half-time and walked by the White Hart. They stuck their noses in and rung us back on the mobiles and said, "Look, there's 50 Chelsea in there, it's 4 o'clock. So 18 of us went to the White Hart, knowing really we was only going to get a slap, and obviously we got a slap of sorts, and I got nicked along with about another 4 Leicester lads. And that's mental, to think about doing that really. It's absolutely mental. Because you know, when you leave, you're buoyed up, and you're all thinking, well, what have we come for? To sit in a pub in Covent Garden. If there's Chelsea there at 4 o'clock, let's go. I can understand the mentality, but it's really stupid. I got community service and a 2-year ban, even England games. They took me passport from me and all the rest of it. I've been charged 9 or 10 times. Some of the times you get nicked. Alright, hands up. It's a fair cop. But it's the silly times. Like, as I said, once in Bournemouth, I got nicked, trying to get in the ground drunk. Things like that. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Most of it I wouldn't do different and I wouldn't change it for the world. But I wouldn't have gone on these suicide runs. You're going to get done. And the name of the baby squad was down another level, because you've been done, and the chances are you're going to get seriously hurt or nicked. And that was always the big worry with me, getting nicked. You recover from a slap, don't you? Quite easily. For me, our biggest rivals. Team-wise, Derby and Forest, because of the close proximity, but add Coventry to that as well. We don't like Coventry, to be honest. As regards firms, again, Forest, Derby and Coventry. Forest fancy themselves, that's for sure, not sure why. Seem to think they are the best in the East Midlands. We are all entitled to our opinion, I suppose, but I don't agree. We have had some good offs with Derby over the years, home and away. As for Coventry, we just don't like them, and vice versa. Now, in Leicester, we have this thing with Chelsea. They seem to hate us, but if you listen to them, they don't rate us. We never travel, they say. Well, lads, that is not strictly true, is it? Been there many times, White Hart, for example, and not to forget the time at the stage door, yes, we were there. Chelsea always come to Leicester, I'll give them that. But they never have it easy, I am sure they will agree. Better stick Portsmouth in there too, we always go to Pompey and they know why. The baby squad faced racism from other mobs, but to be honest, it's never really affected us, to be honest. You see, over the years we have had black and Asian lads in our firm, fucking good lads too, some of which are great friends of mine. I suppose in the 80s, most grounds had a bit of banana throwing and silly monkey chants, but I never really witnessed it at Leicester, certainly no worse than anywhere else. There is a massive youth scene at Leicester, and, from what I can gather, it's the same at most clubs. Like I said before, the young lads have it a lot harder than we ever had it. They hear all the stories of how it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, hearing how we done this, done that, and they want to repeat it. But with all the restrictions, banning orders, CCTV, etc., it must be very frustrating for them, and I suppose that some of them feel that the older ones don't really have time for them. But, from what I can see, the future is in good hands at Leicester, because they are committed, that's for sure. At over 40, my time is done. But I look at these lads and think it will always be there. I think there will always be a baby squad. There will always be lads that want to do football this way. This is what terrace legend and former Chelsea headhunter Jason Mariner had to say about Leicester baby squad. The following are all his own words. But then we always seemed to have it when we went up to Leicester. For reasons that are not clear to me, Chelsea and the baby squad have been massive rivals for years. No one knows why. It has always been that way. I suppose it is a compliment for both mobs. If someone hates you and you hate them, you must be doing something right. In fact, one of the best offs we have ever had was Leicester away. It was the 6th of May 1994, and we turned out a good couple of hundred that day. To throw the old bill off the scent, the plan was to go one stop on the train past Leicester to Loughborough and meet up in a pub called the Railway around 11. After a good few beers, most of the lads decided to go to the game, but 27 of us decided to stay in the pub, and I know it was 27 because my pal Muzzer decided to do a head count. Very precise was our Muzzer. I couldn't miss the opportunity to take the piss. Not 25 of us, not 30, 27. Are you sure you got that one right, Muzz? Yes, Jason, 27. I smiled at him. Yeah, Muzzer. But it ain't half a good fucking 27. And it was. As well as Muzzer and me, they were all top boys. Nightmare. Nick from Bromley, who is now deceased, RIP mate. Tony Cavell. Perky, Dave and Ian Sim. It was the last game of the season and we were desperate to get to grips with Leicester's mob. We had been in touch with the bigger Chelsea contingent inside the stadium to get the SP on what had been happening. Unfortunately, we didn't have a clue if we were coming back to Loughborough or not. By this time we had all had a skinful. There was no way we were going back to London without looking for the enemy. F it, we thought, we'll go to their town centre. So we marched out of the pub and got on a train for Leicester town centre. When we arrived, we came out of the station and walked diagonally across the road. Then, in the distance, we saw them. There didn't seem to be that many of them. Maybe 27 would be enough. Would it hell? As we drew closer, we could see their mob was getting bigger and bigger. There must have been 150 of them. We were outnumbered 6-1 on our opponent's manor. Not a great prospect, you might think, and you couldn't have blamed us for having it away on our toes. But it didn't enter our heads to run. Why? We were full of drink. We were 27 of the gamest lads you have ever met. And most important of all, we effing hate Leicester. Stand Chelsea. Stand Chelsea. It was all you could hear. 27 voices in unison. All of a sudden, there was an almighty roar. I turned round and got the shock of my life. There, from the other end of the street, from behind us, another 80 baby squad were coming our way. There was a deafening silence. Not one of our boys uttered a sound. Without saying a word, we had taken a collective decision. This was now a suicide mission. We had to have it on our Bromleys. Just as we started to leg it, the old bill turned up. If I'm being honest, I had never been so pleased to see them in my life. With the 27 now broken up into even smaller units, I found myself in a group of just 8, which was being pointed in the direction of the station by the cozzers. As we approached, I noticed a group crossing the bridge and heading for our platform. It was Leicester. "There's a mob coming over the bridge," I shouted. And that's when it kicked off. 15 or so baby squad against 8 of us. It was a really good toe-to-toe. Nick from Bromley tried his best to kung fu kick one of theirs, but landed right on his arse. That was hilarious. But what wasn't funny was how narrow that platform was. As I was fighting, the thought kept going through my mind. What if these cunts get the better of me and I end up on the tracks. I didn't have the slightest doubt that they would do it. The hatred between the two clubs was just so intense. We did well on the platform against Leicester. Then the old Bill came on the scene and started whacking everyone with their truncheons. I remember turning round and seeing that Dave the Twin had rugby tackled an old Bill, desperately trying to pull himself up after a fight with one of the baby squad. Some of us had taken a good few blows from the Cozzers, as well as fighting with Leicester. The arrival of the law was too late to save Dave's twin Ian from being cut by a big black fella on the back of his neck. An ambulance arrived and Ian was taken to hospital, accompanied by Dave. Leicester were still milling about outside and tried to attack the ambulance because the twins were inside. We later found out that 40 baby squad had come to the railway pub to have it with us, but that we had just missed them. I would have preferred that to what actually happened, because the numbers would have been more evenly balanced. Still, I think Leicester have to respect what we did that day. Not many firms would march into the middle of Leicester, prepared to take on the massed ranks of the baby squad at 6:30 in the evening, and with only Muzzer's gallant 27 in tow. Incidentally, I am now pals with a few of Leicester's mob, especially Coalville Daz Smith, who is a really good friend through organising an after-dinner talk for me up in Coalville. To be fair, they're good lads. Let's hear from another absolute legend, Andy Nichols from Everton, and this is what he had to say about the baby squad. The following are all his own words and stories. We went there in 2 unmarked Luton vans in the year 1985. The year before, about 40 of us had had it in their stand. It had been a close fight, and now we wanted to finish it off. We arrived in the town about noon, were all tooled up, and the 30 of us marched around ready for anything. As we made the shops and a small market, it was as if we had arrived in Pakistan, and with the right-wing followers we had, it went off in seconds. They were mad and fought us all the way. One got punched through a fruit and veg stall and was out cold. They couldn't wake him up, and soon the busies were everywhere. Straight away 2 were nicked, and we were penned against a wall. It was not what we had come for. We wanted Leicester's lads. We were escorted to the ground, but got off by the main entrance and clashed with their lads, who were soon on their toes. A couple more got nicked, and what was a tidy little mob was getting smaller by the minute, and the game hadn't even started. We won the match 2-1, Andy Gray scored them both, and it was the start of a run that saw us win the league. We left just before the end, and were soon away from the ground, and straight away bumped into their firm. We had them off again, but were chasing them to the town centre, and our vans were in the opposite direction. A few of them mingled in with us and told us to keep walking to the station. It was fair enough, but then one of them uttered the worst words of his life. "We're going to kill the cunts when they get there." He had mistaken us for Leicester, and before you could blink, he had been slashed across the face, and his mates were set upon in a vicious attack. But what more did they expect? We got to the station, but the busies had us again and were going mad, trying to find out who had done the slashing. We were just standing there shrugging our shoulders, and it was making them madder. All the Leicester lads were as bad, trying to get at us, calling us scouse bastards. But it was too late. We had done what we came for. They were a right gang of cry-arsing mugs and tried to get everyone nicked. Nobody got done for it, though a few got fines for the fighting, nothing major. We had to wait until 9 at night for them to get bail, and were still fighting with gangs of blacks on a housing estate even then. It was a great day. Thank you to Andy Nichols, taken from his excellent book called Scally. But now let's get back to Leicester. The baby squad's activities, including those involving Paul Allan, garnered significant media attention. In 2000, Leicester fans were ranked as the second most violent in England and Wales, with the baby squad being a significant factor in this assessment. The firm's involvement in various clashes and incidents led to widespread coverage in national and local media, highlighting the challenges of football-related violence during that period. Today, Leicester's baby squad is part of football folklore. a symbol of a turbulent era in English football history. Members like Riaz and Daz now reflect on their past with clarity, using their stories to warn younger generations of the cost of violence. The baby squad's legacy remains in Leicester terraces, pubs and streets, etched in memories, scars, and the culture of a city forever changed by football. For those who want to learn more, read Memoirs of an Asian Football Casual by Riaz Khan, explore interviews on the Leicester Lives podcast, and revisit the turbulent history of English football firms where identity, loyalty, and violence collide.
I remember in Haymarket I saw a gang of lads walk past me, led by a black lad, Rasta, and they were dressed really well, wearing Fila, Cicchini, Les, Fila and Pringle and
branded sportswear,
branded golfing wear and sportswear, tennis wear and golfing wear, and looked really cool the way they looked and the way they dressed. They're all individual lads, but they're all individually dressed, but they all look the same.
Like
if you
a
know
unit,
what I mean, like a unit. So I looked and thought, wow, these guys, they look really cool, well dressed. And someone said, that's such and such, leader of the baby squad.
Oh wow!
So I was like, who?
That's the first time you heard that term.
Yeah.
Or that word.
Yeah. The baby squad, and I thought, because they were young lads, they were like I was 17, and these guys are like 16, 17 as well. But apart from the leader, was a little bit older, he's probably a couple of years older than me, I think. And they walked through the Haymarket, and I looked down, and I saw the way they dressed. There were about 10 of them. It looked so cool, and I liked the raincoat the leader had on. And I thought, I wanted that raincoat. So I saved up for a raincoat, and I went into a sports shop, and I bought a Patrick Kogul, which was not the raincoat that lad had on, because I thought it was the same one, but it was completely different. So I started dressing like a casual. That's what they were called, trendies. They were called trendies in those days. And I started dressing similar to that. Even got the haircut, the mushroom perm, and I had the tight jeans. And I'd wear Puma trainers. In those days, Puma G Villas I were. And I'd be walking around town thinking I was dressed like these lads, but not realising that in those days you dress a certain way to belong to a subculture. In those days you had punks. If you dressed like a punk, you'd be a punk. If you was a skinhead, you'd be a skinhead, part of that culture. If you was a goth or an emo, as they're called now, you'd be wearing the black and the nasty nails and the nasty long hair and stuff. You'd be a goth or a punk or whatever. I didn't realise that type of clothing was associated to football violence, football casual culture. So I started dressing like this, and this lad, Mark, his name was Mark Keller. He was half Indian. His dad was an Anglo-Indian.
Anglo-Indians, yeah.
Do you know what they are?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, he was an Anglo-Indian, and his mum was English. And he kept looking at me. I was in the Haymarket just chilling out, and he come up to approach me, and goes, and he was dressed, like a casual. And he just looked at me up and down. I looked at him and thought, who's this geezer? You know what I mean, sort of thing. And he goes, do you go to football? I goes, yeah, I watch football. He goes, no, do you actually go to football? Do you go to watch Leicester? I goes, no. He goes, then why are you dressed like that for? I goes, what do you mean? Because this is the uniform of a football casual, a football hooligan. I goes, you what? I didn't know what he's talking about. Because I've seen football violence before on television, and there was all scarfers. People with red and white scarves or blue and white scarves wearing flares, or, the old footage of football violence. So I didn't know this dress style was associated with football violence. And this was like in 1983 in the Haymarket. And he goes, yeah, we've got a big match on this Saturday. It's against Birmingham City FC. They've got a black firm. And he goes, I'm recruiting lads to go to this game, and a bit like yourself and ethnic minorities, to show them that Leicester have an ethnic minority crew as well. So I goes, all right, I'll come. And my brother Yusuf was younger than me. I didn't want him to get involved. He was wearing the clothes as well. He started dressing like that as well.
Because of you, basically.
Yeah. And he imitated it, obviously, because of bigger brother and stuff. So I said, no, you're not going to come. You're staying at home. I borrowed his Fila tracksuit top. He had a Fila Beyond Borg top, which is quite expensive now, because collector's items now. They're about 350 quid for a tracksuit top.
Beyond Borg, as in the legendary player.
Yeah. He used to have a certain label.
Like a brand, yeah.
It was Fila, but with it was like a collaboration.
Yeah. Similar to what Ronaldo's done with Nike and Adidas.
Yeah, CR7, what it's called, that sort of stuff. And so I borrowed this top, went to the football, went to the train station, about 10:30, 11:15 in the morning, got to Leicester City train station, and I saw about 70, 80 lads, all dressed the same, in all this designer clobber, tennis wear and golf wear. It was a sea of young men, and I was like, what's going on here? I saw black, white, and I saw Asian lads who are older than me. They were there, and I thought, this is it. This is what I belong to. This is where I found my calling. All those years I didn't belong to anything. I couldn't fit into anything. I couldn't fit in with the Asian gangs. I couldn't fit in with the white gangs at school. I could not fit in. Now I found my calling. This was like my calling, if you get what I mean.
You felt like it's a place of belonging.
Exactly. That's what every young man wants to find, is that feeling of belonging to something.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.